Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I appreciate your time. Joining us today is John Glass. I'm a client of his and had some very interesting, very eye-opening experiences through conversation on discussing my portfolio. And I thought it would be a great webinar, and I'm hoping you guys can learn how I did. So, my name's Ryan Hermansky. I'm president of Private Money Funding. I want to start by introducing you to my business partner, Doug Daly. Doug Daly is our chief legal officer. I'm going to have him say a few words. Then I'll introduce you to John Glass, and we can get started.
Great. I've been practicing law for 20 years, primarily in real estate and compliance law, and just want to spend a few minutes on what I think makes private money funding different. So we are a state licensed commercial mortgage banker. State regulator oversees how we operate. We're held to a set of rules on how we lend, how we disclose, and not every state requires this. Actually, most states don't regulate commercial mortgage lending at all. So what that means is first, audit financial statements. We're required to submit financial statements every year to our regulator. These are prepared by independent third-party accounting firms to demonstrate compliance. So we actually have outside auditors that are looking at our books, and I think is a level of transparency that you simply don't get with most private lending. There are minimal capital requirements. We're required to post bonds as financial backstops. Then there's actually the examinations by the regulator themselves. So really ongoing accountability, operating inside a regulated, audited framework where we take obligations that really most lenders in private lending never really have to meet. And we think that's exactly the standards that our investors' capital deserves. So with that, Ryan, now I'll hand it back to you and happy to take any questions at the end.
Well said, Doug. Thank you. So Doug and I are both on the private money funding side. And then I'd like to introduce to John Glass. John Glass is a financial planner with Glass Financial. John, if you could say a few words about who you are, and then maybe we can jump into just some questions I was hoping to ask you.
Good morning. I am a lifetime resident of Arizona. I received a business management degree from Northern Arizona University and my master's degree in science and financial services from the American College in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. I've been a New York life agent since 1970, and I'm a registered investment advisor with Eagle Strategy. My firm, Glass Financial, specializes in insurance, estate, and portfolio management. At this point in time, Ryan, I'm ready for some questions.
Great. Thanks, John. Let me just start by saying, when I first met you and first spoke to you, I thought I was in pretty good shape. I thought I was pretty well diversified. I thought I was in pretty good shape, from an insurance standpoint. You quickly corrected me that I had some holes that we need to fill and needed to address. And, I feel like there's probably a lot of people out there in a similar situation. So that's ultimately why this webinar came about. Without using, my story, I was just kind of curious if you had some other clients that came to you in similar situations that, probably thought they were pretty well diversified, and you were able to kind of shed some lights on their scenarios and really explain, where the holes in their game were.
Yes, that's a very interesting question, because what I find so often is with many clients, believe it or not, they take a lot of risk and they don't have a lot of liquidity. And then what happens is a turnabout happens in the marketplace, and then they run into trouble, and the investment that they purchased, a lot of times they lose it. So I think what's very, very important, and this saying has been around for a long time, don't put all your eggs in one basket. You have to be well diversified. And when I say diversified, you need money markets, you need bonds, you need other liquid assets in addition to your assets that aren't liquid. And I'll use myself as an example. I've invested a lot in real estate over the years, and there's a number of my projects that are really very worthwhile, but to to this day, there's one of them I've held for 10 years. I know I'm going to make a lot of money on it eventually, but I had enough liquidity along the way that I could hold on to it.
Okay. So it's not necessarily how much stuff. It's what stuff, right? You got to spread the stuff out. Is that kind of a fair, simple
Yeah,
way
I
to
think yeah,
explain
I
it?
think you have to spread it out. And in fact, I've had some investments with one of your principals, and that we had to hold a long, long, long time, and we came out fine. But the only reason it worked, uh, there was no one in the investment that had to liquidate it right now. So holding power is very, very, very important. And if you have holding power, most of the time things do work out.
So when you're talking with the client, perhaps for the first time, is there a formula you use to kind of really help determine whether they truly are diversified or not?
Yeah, I think one of the things that life is interesting. When you uh, let's say you graduate from college and you get married at first, there's really not too much planning there. I mean, you get married, you maybe have a 401k through your employer, and then a few late years later, you have children. So the next question that happens, probably the one asset that's very, very important, and it really is an asset, is life insurance. And why do you buy life insurance? I think the reason you buy it is it creates immediate liquidity for the family. Not only does it create immediate liquidity for the family, but when you start going into investments, you can be a little more risky if you have enough insurance. But I think the next thing is uh, I often I ask you, and I ask you, what kind of formula did you put together to determine the amount of life insurance that you have? And you said, oh, I didn't really use a formula. And then we started going through things. I asked you, how much do you owe on your house? What do you want to put away for education? Uh, what do you want paid off if something happens to you? What do you have in the way of assets? And there's X amount left over. And that X amount that left over isn't near enough to provide the kind of income that you wanted for your spouse. And
Sure.
so as a result, we use the formula, and the formula is pretty simple. If let's say you're short $100,000 a year, and you divide that by the percentage that you want to earn on your money, let's say it's 5%, you come up with a formula that you need $2 million worth of life insurance if you keep the capital intact. Does that answer your question? Is that a
Yeah, I think that's helpful. What was eye opening for me is I got insurance at an early age. Basically when I was first married, even before I had kids. And what I didn't understand is that you really need to keep revisiting this as your personal situation changes and your income goes up over the years. That insurance needs to go up with it. Um, One of the other important things I remember, looking back at our notes from our conversations, we talked about, the four pillars and, what that really means from evaluating your portfolio and evaluating, just how diversified you are. Those pillars were growth, income, liquidity, and risk. All four of those are intertwined in different investments. Some investments, allow you to hit two or three of those. Some maybe just one. But I'd like to just kind of touch on those. I think those terms are really important, and unless people have a good understanding of what those terms really mean, I think it's hard to evaluate, kind of where you stand in your portfolio. So just to start with growth, and if we could just maybe chat for a minute or two on each one of these important terms. But what do you think people get wrong about growth specifically when they're using the term growth? They get excited about investing, they want growth. Where do you think they're really going wrong when they're analyzing growth?
I think a lot of times what takes place is it's not, you have to really have a well diversified financial plan or portfolio to reduce the risk. And the thing is, if you put it all in growth, the problem is if the market turns around, it can bite you in the butt. And I've had clients, I can think of one client that all he did was continually went after the deal, and he had $50 million in assets, and he lost it. And
Wow.
and I really believe that you kind of have to look at it two ways. You have to have your conservative portfolio that will take care of you forever. And then hopefully you make more money than your conservative portfolio, and you invest that in real estate. You invest it in uh, money markets. I mean, not money markets, but like your investment. And it's a diversified portfolio. And that diversified portfolio over and above the conservative stuff, it's absolutely amazing to me. But I have made a lot more on my extra money that I invest in real estate and other things than I did the conservative. But I would not trade one for the other, because I always want to be in a situation that if I have a friend call me and says, "Oh, let's go to Europe for 2 weeks," I can go. And the way I've structured everything, I can go. So,
Got it. Then income. So income is not necessarily just your W-2 or your paycheck you're receiving every couple of weeks. You touched on the fact you sell insurance, which can be used kind of as income at a stage in your life. Do you do annuities as well?
yeah, we do annuities, and I'll use myself as an example on that. On my conservative portfolio, of course, I have my 401k like a lot of you have. I've deferred commissions, and basically then I've invested in other things that produce income, and I have more than enough income from my pension, from my 401k to have nice income coming in every single month. And I think income is very, very important, because a lot of the growth things don't pay you right away.
Yeah.
You have to wait. So,
Well, nice segue there, because the next one's liquidity. I think this is something people probably overlook. I've certainly experienced that in my conversations. Can you just touch on the importance of liquidity and how that separates some investments
I
from
think
others?
I think liquidity is very important. I'll use myself and I'll use other clients too. But uh, when I was your ages, and I'm a little older now, not much, but older. Um, like my life insurance, I think now I have a huge amount of money in my life insurance. And the beauty about my life insurance is I can borrow against it at 6%. And 6%, oh, you say, geez, why would you pay on your own money? Uh, the thing I'll tell you is this is my insurance is earning 5, so it's costing me a net of 1, so I have arbitrage. And what my insurance has done for me along the way is that it's it it's created cash whenever I need it, and I can always borrow against it if I want to go into something. Some of your partners, I've seen them borrow against their life insurance year after year after year, and then they pay it back. Then they pay it back, and and I think the other thing about the life insurance that I like is I've been able to take a little more risk in other things. And one additional thing about the life insurance that's been very nice on my pension, I didn't take a joint survivor pension. I took a straight pension because I'm healthy, and I get a lot more at a straight pension than I do a joint survivor. But the reason I could do that is I have a lot of life insurance that's all paid up.
Understood. Well, you actually touched on the last pillar there in that last answer, but the four pillars were growth, income, liquidity, which we've covered, and then wrapping it up would be risk. Can you explain how volatility is, just a factor of risk, and when you're looking at investments in these diversification of portfolios, kind of where risk falls into those categories?
Oh, it's kind of like the old story goes: the more you make, the more the risk is.
Yeah.
A higher return. There's not many things out there where you can get a 9, 10, 12% return and not have a little risk associated with it. If you don't want to have any risk, basically you go into a money market at 3%. You go into an annuity, a fixed one that's like a CD that pays after 5 years, it's maybe paying 5%. You give up return to have something that's more risk free. And the thing is, you can't have it all in risk free because it won't keep up with inflation. you need to do a combination of both. And you have to have holding power. And it's the same with stocks. Stocks are great, uh, but you have to hold them. And if you hold them long enough, they work out. I look at some of my stocks and I say, oh my gosh. I look how some of them went way down, but I held on to them. And now some of them have come way, way back.
Well said. I did want to touch just briefly on what we do and how we built our company to kind of focus on the four pillars and try to touch on as many of those as possible for our clients. But private money funding, we're a fund that's backed by real estate. We're generally first lien position, mostly commercial real estate. We pay our investors 9% on their money. They can come and go as they please, and that investment amount compounds monthly. So to give you an example, if you invest $200,000 in about an 8-year period, you're going to have over $400,000. So you're doubling every 8 years at that 9% compounding monthly amount. What makes us unique is we provide liquidity. So your investment, you can come and go as you please. If you need to pull investments out to go pay taxes, buy a car, or find a different investment, that's an option you have. There's no contract. There's no fees. There's no points. So we provide the liquidity that a lot of investors are looking for. And in the income box, right? So you have the option of either letting your investment compound and grow, or you can just receive a interest distribution in your account each month. And I have several clients that have invested substantial sums, and they live off that. So that's the money that they feel is a very safe investment with us, being backed by real estate, and you live off that payment they get on the first of the month every single month. That's where we try to build this and kind of focus on those pillars as well. I think it's working out exceptionally well for our clients. But it's refreshing and nice to hear somebody in a completely different industry talk about the importance of risk and liquidity and income and growth, and hearing that we hopefully check a lot of those boxes for our investors. Let's see. So we do have some questions. I'd love to jump in and hear a few questions. Anything you want to touch on before we kind of move to some Q&A and turn it over to our audience that's joined us? All right, let me pull up some questions here. All right, Jay Johnson, this is our first question that's come in is from Mia Miller, and she feels like she hears different advice from everyone. How do you know what's actually right for your situation? Let's see. John, do you have any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I think what it boils down to is I want to pull a sheet. I think that you really do need to sit down, do an analysis, and ask a lot of questions to find out what your goals and objectives are. And it's hard to say, oh, you should do this or you should do that, because everyone's a little different. And I like to spend a couple hours asking a lot of questions. And then once you answer those questions, I'll come back with what I think is the direction you should move forward with.
I like that. To add to that, Mia, every single person's just in a unique, different situation. There's oftentimes a lot of similarities from person to person, but no two people's stories are identical. So I do think taking the free consultation from somebody like John or picking up the phone and chatting with us or another financial planner, I think is important. And I touched on this earlier in the call. Your situation changes too. So where you were 5 years from now and now and then 5 years from now, those are all different situations. So this is not a set it and forget it approach. You're planning for the future. You're planning for retirement. But that planning needs to start now and making sure that once you put your initial stages in action, that you keep revisiting it, probably at least annually. All right, Mike has a question for us, John. He's saying, is it too risky to have most of your retirement tied to the stock market?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the market goes up and down. Right now, you're riding a roller coaster that doesn't seem to go wrong. But I think again, having a lot in the market. I think it's great to have a lot in the market, but I think it's also important to be diversified in parts that aren't near as risky.
Well said. We're living in a time right now where the market's at an all-time high. But if you pull back and look at history, there's some big dips in there, and it would be pretty catastrophic to most people if you rode one of those 20 or 30% dips in the market right around your retirement time, or even just too late in your career. It's hard to make that money up. That's why diversifying with just different types of investments across, and it's truly the whole point of this call today is to try to help people avoid just being in one investment box. Try to check a lot of boxes. Let's see, Melanie has got a question directly for you, John, asking, what's your personal view on real estate as an investment?
I love real estate. I've again, going back to my philosophy, I have a big portfolio that's very conservative, and when I say conservative, making 4 or 5%, and I can live on that portfolio. But I've made a lot more money than that portfolio, and I'm invested in real estate, and I've really made a lot more in the real estate than I made on that portfolio. But as I said earlier, I wouldn't give up one for the other, because I think it's important to have both. And I just see too many clients that they don't have both, and sometimes it's tragic. And one other thing I'd like to touch on for you too, I sent Ryan an article today from the Wall Street Journal, and it was by a journalist that was with Wall Street for a long time, and he worked more than 3 decades as a reporter and editor, and for the Wall Street Journal. In the final years, he worked in the retirement and retirement planning area, and he retires with he and his wife. He thinks he hasn't made everything's great, and then his wife gets Alzheimer's, and the bills for long-term care were just unbelievable. And he said, I really made a big mistake there. And I've asked Ryan to send that article out to all of you, because I think it's so important. Because as you probably know, or you heard, approximately 40% of the people after they're 65 do need long-term care eventually. And if you haven't looked at it, you should sure look at it with somebody.
Yeah, well said, John. It's a very powerful article. We'll post that on LinkedIn, and then anybody that reaches out to us, we're happy to share it directly with you as well. John, another question I think's pretty teed up for you here. She says, I've mostly just invested in my 401k. How can I take it from here? So basically, what's her next step?
I think your next step is make sure that you have enough liquid dollars in the bank or in something very conservative, where you have 6 months to a year of income available if you need it. And then I think it's just going into just a diversified portfolio, probably in mutual funds, and just put away so much every single month.
Sounds like probably a perfect time to chat with somebody like you.
That's right.
And Andrea asks, what is your recommendation for investing if you want to make a short-term investment?
I think if you want to go a short-term investment, you want to go into something that is liquid and you can get your money out tomorrow. Ryan, I think you can comment on that one.
Yeah, that's a nice question for us there. But we touched on this briefly. So within private money funding, we are paying 9% on your money. You get a payment in your account each month, or you can let it compound and grow. So you're getting 9% on the new higher amount each month. What allows us to work well for a short-term investment is your investment is liquid. So if you come in for, short-term is a relevant term. So let's say you come in for 4, 5, 6 months and need to pull your money out. That's not a problem at all. There's no contract. There's no lockup period with us. So if it starts to get longer, that's considered short-term for some people, right? So it depends on your situation, but we're built very well to help investors out, let them come and go as they please. And we have a lot of home builders, for example. They're constantly in between projects. They park their money with us until they have another project, and they pull it out and go buy a home and fix it up, flip it, whatever they're doing. So we definitely see investors in that situation where I'd consider them short-term investors, and they're coming and going as they please. All right, got a couple more questions here. Let me find a couple good ones here. John, do you feel like there's some sort of premium you're usually paying if you're dealing with investments that have liquidity, or more risk if there's illiquidity on an investment?
Yes and no. It depends where it is. It depends what it is. I mean, that's kind of a loaded question because
it could be tough.
You really have to look at the where you're putting it.
Sure. I see some questions from Harls that it'd probably be better if you contacted us after. We'd be happy to dive in deeper in that situation and just kind of answer it in your unique situation, whatever that may be. All right. Well, John, I think we got the questions answered for the people that have chimed in. Any closing comments before we wrap this up?
I'd like to say that I think it is very, very important to have a diversified portfolio that's both.
Well said. So we'll actually put John's contact information as well as mine up on the screen. We'd highly recommend and encourage anybody to reach out and ask further questions. Talk one-on-one. Learn about your unique situation and how either John can help, we can help, or steer in the right direction if it's not a great fit. But we greatly appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for logging in. The questions and can keep coming. So send them to us. Please reach out with further questions. But thank you so much for your time. We enjoyed the conversation. We hope you got something out of it. Thanks, John.
Thank you.